Hello everyone, this is Nazneen Abbasi and I welcome you in my first session with Victory Online Academy. So today I am going to start or I am going to teach schema theory from cognitive psychology or cognitive approach to behavior. This is one of the most crucial aspect of cognitive psychology because it talks about the entire mental processing and how mental processing develops with time. So before going further, I wanted to introduce this word schema to you. Schema, we all have a lot of scheme, and this word is actually originated from there only. So how scheme works in psychology, or rather how scheme work in cognition. Before going further, I wanted to first tell you what are the learning outcomes of today's session. The learning outcomes for today's session, so let me use the pointer. So we will be evaluating the theory which we are going to discuss today. And there are a lot of recent researches or references, you call it in psychology. We use references to a lot of research case studies. And I'm going to elaborately discuss how one principle that actually aptly associated with schema theory. So let's start with this. So here you can see on my screen the word model. Just imagine or just think what things come to your mind when you hear the word model. Model, right? Someone like this, she can be a model. Someone like this, he can be a model too. Yes, of course. She can be a model too, and of course she is. So all these different people or different images fit into one scheme of work, that is model, right? So this particular first principle of human psychology or cognitive psychology says human beings are information processors and mental processes guide behavior. We process information and these mental processes actually tell you how to behave, how to do things in different scenarios. And schema theory is simply a mental representation. For example, when I say the word egg, so egg is associated with omelette, egg is boiled egg, mornings, or I say sunny side up. So all these schemes, and it has mental representation of knowledge. We have schemes basically for everything. When I say teacher, lot of teacher, male teacher, female teacher, subject wise, you so many things comes to an individual's mind. And because we process each and every information, and that is how mental processes work. Attention is a mental process, thinking is a mental process, language is a mental process. And today one of the theory we are going, and that is schema theory, that talks about that how different schemes are formed in our brain and how we process information around us. And we have schemes for everything. So just an empirical definition, what is scheme? A scheme is a cognitive structure that provides a framework for organizing information about the world, event, people, and action. So I'm repeating, it is about the world, event, people, and action. So everything is organized in your brain. So your brain has different sections, different drawers where you have all the information put in particular categories. And that categories or that scheme is known as schemas. So if you see this image, this particular image, when I say a football player, an image comes to your mind. So if you see, apart from schemas help you in understanding human behavior, it also at times leads to stereotyping people. It's an overgeneralized belief about a group of people, right? It's an overgeneralizing belief about a group of people. So before moving further, I wanted to further enhance or further elaborate on how schemas are formed. So schemas are formed Every day we change schemas, we keep on adding and deleting information. The first one is assimilation. Assimilation means you see a dog, you ask your mother what it is. Your mother says it's a dog. Next time you see a different kind of dog, but you can associate, oh, the same animal with four legs, it's doggy or a dog. So you know an animal which look cute has four legs is actually doggy or a dog. So this is known as whatever you see, you keep on adding information and you label it. And that is known as assimilation. You assimilate, right? The second thing is accommodation. For example, again, you find you understood the concept of dogs, an animal which looks cute, there are four legs and furry animal, it's dog. Next time you see a cow and you call it doggy or a dog. And your mother say, no, it's cow. So what you do? So now next time you realize, oh, so this is an animal which is taller, has patches or has huge body, is actually cow. So what you do? You alter a schema. You alter existing schemas or ideas as a result of new information or new experiences. A new schema may also develop during the process, right? So the first one is assimilation, going back to the slide, where you add on information. Here you add information. You see dogs, you keep on adding different breeds of dog in the concept or the scheme dog. And here you assimilate. Accommodate. Accommodate means you alter information based on the new information you get or new experience you get. So apart from that, yes, there are times that schemes or schemas affect the way we see race, right? Someone who is wearing a crown, the high chance the person is lady's queen, right? So there are so many times schema affect the way we behave. So there are different kinds of schemes of work we have, and they are further classified into three: script, self-schema, and social schema. So as the name suggests, script is about an entire process. So for example, you have gone to a restaurant or a marriage ceremony and you know how to do, where to sit, where to eat. So you follow a procedure, for example, which provide information about a sequence of events that occur in more or less unchanging order in a particular context, such as going to a restaurant, visiting a dentist, or attending a class. So nowadays when we are doing virtual classroom, so you have to switch on your audio device should be working, your internet should be stable. So you do things in script, right? The second one is self-schema. So as a human being, by default, we have this understanding, and there are so many people who struggle to, I understand that also, that we know what are our strengths and what are our weakness. And these all things works because of our memory. So organized information we have about ourselves. For example, information is stored in our memory about our strength and limitation and how we feel about them. So that is known as self-schema. So we have a scheme of work for ourselves also. The third one is social schema. Oh, stereotyping. You see something, you label it. Right? When I say nurse, so suddenly a female will come in your mind. But a male could be a nurse too. So you social schema or stereotype represent information about the group of people. For example, American women, accountant, doctors, you have a scheme of work or social schemas, right? So I'm repeating, script it works about sequence of event. So let me highlight it. Highlighter, yeah. So let me highlight this. Script is about scheme of sequence of event. Social is about yourself, about ourselves. Social is about, for example, when you label a group of people, represent information about a group of people, right? So, in short, or summarizing or outlining schema theory has been based on interrelated ideas proposed over years and several theorists to account for an influence of stored knowledge. So when you say a dog or an egg, it's already stored knowledge. And day by day, you process current information processing. And it changes your behavior, rather it changes the way you see something. So schema theory has benefited particularly from work of Bartlett, Romanet, and Schenck and Ibsen. So simply, it's a mental representation. I'm repeating, it's mental representation. It's stored knowledge and day by day information process. The way we form schemas are assimilation, you add on, accommodation, you alter it. And there are three kinds of schema: script, self, and social. So type of processing, how we process information. So I talked about that it's to form schemas, we process information. So how we process information? Honestly speaking, we can simply, something that reach to our sense perception. For example, you have five senses: touch, taste, kinesthetic, so every hearing, listening, hearing, speaking. So we get information from different senses. So you don't need much of cognitive processing, but you just, when you see something and you just form, or when you touch something, you, oh, it's hot or it's cold. So it's sense perception. The second one is relevant schema in order to which behavior is most appropriate when you think about something, when you think about situation, even places and experiences, right? So bottom up processing and explanation that sees perception and occurring directly from sensory input. For example, you have five senses without a need of further cognitive process, right? So you don't need attention, concentration, this and that language. You just touch something, you just taste something, you just see something, you just hear something, and you go for it. The second one is top down. So if, for example, you have always eaten different kinds of egg recipes, and suddenly you come across duck egg recipe or something, so that influences you. Think about it before eating, you try to analyze what it is, right? So before going further, I wanted to elaborate this particular, I want to share my own experience. So we all hear stories, and there are a lot of saying which says, is it the story we hear, or we have our own stories? So this particular story, the War of Ghosts, or rather I say a case study or a research, which is because in psychology you have to use a lot of researches. This particular research is actually very evidential in supporting schema theory. And what unique about the story or any other story, that whatever you hear, after some time, if I ask you to reproduce it, you will reproduce it, but you will make its story shorter. You will add information, or the gist will be there, but you are going to modify information according to your own cultural schemas. So this is a War of Ghosts. It's an American story where different participants read the story, and the actual beauty thing happened. So, this, before going to the story, who was the one? Frederick Bartlett in 1932 used repeated production method to show how fragile our memory is. And what makes our memory fragile is different schemas we have. He told the following story for the same story, War of Ghosts, and then asked participants to retell it to other students who were asked to retell it to turn out until it had been through 6 production. So for example, I'm talking to you, I share my story to you, and you have to pass on to different person, and you have to do it 6 times, right? So he did the same thing. So after that, he asked people, in between he stopped people. It was not immediate processing. After some times, he initiated the idea where you pause the video or the story and you see something else, or you do a distraction task. When it had been through 6 people, the story changed in particular way. It had become shorter. Bartlett found it shrunk from 330 to 180 word. The story was 330 word long, but now after reproduction, after listening again and again, it becomes shorter to 180 words. The detail left out reflected Native American culture, were not Western. So now the participants were not Native Americans, so they were British participants. So they added information according to their own understanding or their own schema or their own culture. The phrasing became more westernized. He argued that we store memories in terms of schemas. These are our own ideas and expectations of the world. They form a framework into which is fit new information. So every time we keep on adding information or things based on your own understanding or your own cultural background. So moving back to the story. So if you see, I have highlighted few words. I'm not asking you to read the entire story. So hunt, seal, canoes. So they say when people start reproducing the story, the hunt seal were replaced with fishing. The canon were replaced with boats, right? Even language changes because every culture use different phrases or different words. Even that changes. So Bartlett found that participants changed the story as they tried to remember it. A process called distortion, right? So they distorted it. Bartlett found that there were three patterns of distortion that took place. Assimilation, the story become more consistent with the participants' own culture. So whenever you do things, even when you write essay, it reflects what you do. What is your cultural obligation? What is your culture, school's practices or your family practices? You bring in yourself there. That in detail were unconsciously changed to fit into the norms of British culture or their own culture. So after that, so Barley did one more good thing. So he asked participants to draw this particular animal cat. And if you see, the original image is here. So when they asked the first trial, people drawn this, the second one this, third one this, fourth one, every time, and by the 10th time it became something else. It became actually the image of cat which is there in your mind, right? So if you see, the second thing is distortion. So if you see, our memory is prone to distort. For example, if it is one of the famous painting, which talks about that how our memory is actually distorted. So if you see, there are times, every time when you say something, an old story, it is distorted. It is not exactly what has happened. So if you see, this painting talks about time, this particular thing which actually represent human being, but with a slot of time, it became something else, right? So second thing is distortion. To support this further, that your memory, how your memory changed because of schemas and how you introduce your own schema. Anderson and Pipchas in 1978 started with this particular research. They asked PPS participants to read the same document. So they have given same document to people describing a house. One group was asked to read as if they are burglars, and the other as if they were prospective house buyers, right? So you read something, keeping in mind, for example, when I write or read something, keeping in mind, I'm a teacher, so there are high chances I'll look for grammar, there are high chances I'll look for something which is like I make out mistakes. But so they have divided people and they have changed their intention that you read please like a burglar, and the second one is you read it as that you are going to buy this house, but the story is the same, was the same. So the burglar remember a massive coin collection, and the house buyer remember the leaky roof. So I'm repeating, the burglars remember a massive coin because they were thieves, so they remember something they have to steal, and the house buyer remember the leaky roof because they have to buy this house, they have to live there. So their understanding and their own requirement reflected when they reproduce the story. But surprisingly, the document was same. But the document was same. Coming further and elaborating this is how it reflects with human beings, right? We all sit in one classroom, but everybody has different perception or different understanding out of that particular subject or particular concept, because that comes from your own memory and your own prior information, right? Your own prior experiences. The group knowledge about how burglar and house buyers behave affected what they retained. And every time when you sit in class, you have your own schemas, your own memory system, and that affect the way you learn or the way you retain information. Bartlett said we don't just passively remember things, we can reconstruct. So he introduced one more beautiful term, that we reconstruct our memories. So he says reconstruction means we keep on adding information, or we keep on working it, taking in pieces from what we see here and using schemes to fill in the gaps. So whatever you see around, you process. So human beings are active information processors. We see things in pieces, what we see here, and use schemas fill in gaps. So that gaps actually filled by your cultural or your upbringing or whatever your education system, everything. So memory is very fragile, or rather I say it's reconstructed. So that's why if you see, even a lot of coach has actually stopped listening to eyewitness testimonies. Why they stop listening to eyewitness testimonies? Because they say, because you can easily manipulate the person, and you can, the memory cannot, and it can be simply altered because memory is reconstructed in nature. Moving further to the second learning outcome, before I move to second learning outcome, I wanted to first just summarize it in few words. Schemes. We have schemes for everything. This theory actually represents about mental representation of knowledge. Thirdly, schemes are formed through assimilation and accommodation. Assimilation, you add on; accommodation, you alter schemas. There are different kinds of schema. The first one is script, self, and social. Moving further from there, you human, whenever we ask to reproduce information, we distort it, we make things according to our own cultural upbringing, or we reconstruct it. So memory stored in schema theory. So that how, what role memory play? So whatever you do, there are three stages of memory processes: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Encoding means converting information into a form that can be entered into memory. It is just like that you read it, you understand it. It could be visual, semantic, taste, and smell. Again, information coming from different senses. Storage, you keep it, you put it, you lock it, it is there in your brain. And if it is there in your brain, then you are going to retrieve it. And how you are going to retrieve it? Whenever you require or you want to think about a dog or a head or a bulb, it comes out automatically. Encoding, storage, and retrieval. So this particular information encoding, storage, and retrieval, it also talks about that how human memory also play a huge role in understanding schemas or enhancing or distorting schemas. So as a result, this distortion is because of human memory processes. Unconsciously and consciously, we keep on guessing schemas, and that influences our memory system. Flores in 1967 found that instruction stressing the need for accurate recall eliminated almost half of the error usually obtained. So, if you stress on some individual that you try to recall everything accurately, there are high chances under pressure the person can eliminate almost half of the errors, but it is not 100%. You cannot eradicate 100% error. There was no control to see, for example, our culture would remember the story. For example, there was not, and everything is basically comes from you belong. So, moving further, but how one can evaluate this particular theory, because this theory talks about, and it is a theory. The good thing is theory, and when the theory is there in IB psychology, you always evaluate through teacups. What does teacup stands? It is not teacup that you drink Indian tea or Western tea. It is actually acronymic. Here is a reminder what is called acronym stands for. So I usually ask people how to testable. It is a possible to set, the first thing, T stand for testability. It is a possible to set up experimental study to test the theory. Schema theory is testable. By priming one schema, we are able to determine whether the scheme help and interfere with learning. For example, when this canons change to seaboards, or so you can understand that how much you can trust this theory. For example, in India, we say, I said Indian tea or milk tea. So that is my own understanding. empirical evidences that comes from researchers. For example, Anderson and Pitcherson, War of Ghosts. Is there is a research? Yes. That contradict? Yes. There are a lot of researches, but the supported schema theory above, you can see the study by Anderson and Pitcherson, Brewer and Turner, and of course War of Ghosts, which we have done. There is biological research to support the way in which brain categorize information. For example, Krama's 2009 found that from the visual cortex, information about living and non-living objects is shuffled to different parts of the brain, so as to trigger appropriate reaction even in blind participant. These new findings suggest that wiring that connects different area of the brain. So even if with blind participants, you can see that they are connecting information in the brain. It does not have form of gradual based or visual. It doesn't have gradual based or visual inputs. This means that our brain is automatically sort information and classifies it in the same manner which schemes theory predicts. So there is biological evidences that how schema theory assimilate, accommodate, even if the participants are blind, they can predict it, they can accommodate it, they can assimilate it. And thirdly, application. Apart from, there are a lot of people, apart from looking it in eyewitness testimony, there are a lot of application. After the, you can even simply use it, that human memory is open to restoration, human memory is reconstructed. And that's why whenever you speak about truth is what you all see, but what I see, what you see, but truth is something very concrete. But we developed a very abstract understanding because it comes from our own schemas. Can theory be based explain change behavior? According to me, yes. Now you have to think whether it is yes or no for you. Schema theory has also been applied to abnormal psychology, means diagnosis, in back research in depression, relationship, and health psychology, and construct validity. This is a new term. So are the concept that make theory well defined? Can we, do you think this theory is well defined? Concept of schema is too vague because you cannot see where schemas are formed in human brain. Yes, as a cognitive process, it doesn't have a biological proof that which part of the brain is actually accommodating all the schemas there. Even the use of fMRI simply show how brain is active. That not clearly what exactly the individual processes at that time. So it can tell you which part of the human brain is actually processing information, but what is happening inside it, it's still not sure. Is it unbiased? There are a lot of researches, but they are only based on certain gender or certain culture. Schema theory is applied across culture and there is no apparent bias in the research, although most in the early research was done in West. But now a lot of countries, a lot of people, psychologists are actually doing researches based on their own scheme. And the last one is the teacup with P, predictive validity. Do you think, does this theory enable us to predict behavior? Can we use to predict trends in behavior? Or can we use to predict an individual behavior? I can simply say that we say that human behavior is how we assimilate, how we accommodate, how social schemas are there. If you know you are weak in mathematics, there are high chances when a maths problem is there, you will yourself say, I withdraw, because of your self schemas. The theory helps to predict behavior. We can predict, for example, what types of information will be recalled when given a list of words. The trends are there, such as labeling and sharpening, are commonly seen in individual recall a news story. However, we cannot predict actually what an individual will recall. Finally, another criticism of the theory is that it is not entirely clear how schemas are acquired. We can say it is because you keep on adding and deleting information, but what is actual process involved in there? It is not possible actually observe schema processing taking place in the brain. So that's why it's part of cognitive psychology. It's processing. We call it processing, but we don't have scientific evidence that support that which part of human behavior or brain is working on it. Before moving to my last slide, I just want to recap and further wants to summarize the entire schema theory. So A scheme is a cognitive structure that provides a framework for organizing information about the world, event, people, and action. So, and how we do it: assimilation, we add on information; accommodation, we alter information. There are three kinds of schemas we have: script, which is sequence of event; self, which is about our own self, our strengths and weaknesses. The third one is stereotype, representation of information of a certain group of people based on their group contribution or group membership. It is basically interrelated ideas stored in knowledge and current information, and you process information. There are a lot of famous people who have worked on it. Bartlett, the first person. And how these processing, this schema process work: at times it works like bottom up information, where you just sense through your senses and you develop understanding. The second one is top down, where you think about it, you go beyond that. Frederick Bartlett said that when you reproduce information, it becomes shorter, or rather crispier, and that is because of your own schemas or because of your own culture, and that interferes with your learning. You distort information, and again bringing in things from your own understanding. And thirdly, information are being enhanced or deleted or distorted because of your own intention behind it, or because of your own schemas. And human being memory is reconstructed in nature. You see here small things and you add in or delete, you fill in gaps according based on your own understanding or your own prior knowledge, and that's why you call it memory is reconstructive in nature. Three processes of human memory: encoding, storage, and retrieval. If you encode information, you jot out down things based on your own understanding, you store it, and whenever you require it, it comes out. Retrieve it. Evaluation, that memory is open to distortion because of reconstructional or memory influences. In spite that you try hard to eliminate errors, but still you cannot completely 100% eliminate all the errors. So if you have to evaluate any theory, you have to use teacup. In psychology, whenever you evaluate any theory, you use teacup. Testability, empirical evidences, researches. Application, construct validity, unbiasedness, and predictive validity. The schema theory is whatever that, for example, when you think about psychology, what comes to your mind, and that trend is basically talks about or basically tells you what it actually stored in your memory about psychology or any other thing. So schema theory at times helps you making things simpler, but at times it leads to a lot of stereotyping. So before moving to my last slide, I just want to recap. I wanted to say that thank you for watching. For any other thing, please like our page, Victory Online Classes, and I hope I'll see you next. Thank you so much.